Hello everyone and welcome to Command List, a podcast where two brothers talk about fighting games. Playing on the left-hand side of the screen is me, Raging Demon, and playing on the right-hand side of the screen, because that's just the other side, is Chaotic Jim. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Excited for this episode. One of my favourite games.
Yep, now in this episode we are going to talk about, well, royalty, effectively. Tekken. The original Tekken.
OG.
Now, again, before we kick off our Tekken talk, what have you been playing?
Surprisingly, not really in my wheelhouse, but I've been playing a lot of Lego Marvel.
What? Why?
Well, the youngest, he got it and he wanted to play it. He doesn't play too many games. It's not really his thing, but he has been absorbed by it. So, you know, he's sitting on the couch with him and he's needs some help or whatever. So, been playing a lot of that with him. Other than that, I've been playing a lot of Hades. So, you know, it's been Hades nonstop. So
The Hades channel, Hades 24/7.
Oh, man. It's so addictive.
I was at you to play that for ages.
Yep.
Yeah, Hades is fantastic. I played the fuck out of that.
It's brilliant.
Such a great game.
Yeah. And I like history, mythology, all that sort of jam. So this was right up my alley. So what about yourself? What have you been playing?
I've been playing the Cowabunga collection. So I've been playing all the old beat-em-ups with a mutual friend of ours. We did the original arcade game, the one that's a fucking massive coin muncher, which is just death everywhere you go. You've got to, obviously, when you have infinite money, it's not so bad. It's a very quick game. Turtles in Time on the arcade port or arcade version, and then the SNES port, and then we also did Hyperstone Heist. They're actually solid beat-em-ups. The Hyperstone Heist was a Mega Drive one.
Yep.
It's not very good. It's okay.
No.
It's just not. I think they kind of knew they were fucked on the Mega Drive because of Streets of Rage and shit. SNES is not known for its beat-em-ups. It's not. I mean, some of the Nintendo sort of fanboys will get at me about that, but the Mega Drive had stronger beat-em-ups.
Genesis for American listeners, and
yeah. And by strongest, I mean Streets of Rage.
yeah, you can't go past it.
Yeah,
Can't go past it.
But Turtles in Time on the SNES is pretty fucking good. Look, it's up there. It's the best beat 'em up on that system, in my opinion. And yeah, that was fun. That was better than the arcade port as well, surprisingly. I mean, the graphics and sound are not, but like the gameplay is. I mean, arcade machines are very coin muncher-y, and yeah, so.
Well, you can't blame them for it. At the end of the day, it is a business, and you know they need to make their money. And arcades, they had to make their money as well, because in the early days, a lot of them could not afford to outright buy the cabinets. So, you know, some arcades had to rent them, and that tended to promote coin munchery.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, I mean, I think that collection is absolutely good value too. I mean, I'm gonna get to Tournament Fighters eventually. We played the shit out of the Mega Drive one.
Yep.
It's not good, but it's
Nope.
Ninja Turtles.
It is.
Yeah, so I haven't really played the SNES one, so I'm going to, and I hear it is better. So, and you know, like generally that is the case, but some of that is also just Nintendo being the more popular system.
Yep.
The Mega Drive really, really gave the SNES a run for its money over in our market and in Europe, but over in North America, it was ahead for like a hot minute, and then, you know, the SNES overtook it. So some of that is just nostalgia and bias, and, you know, but I'll give them both a crack again.
Yep.
And, you know, if it's better than the one on the Mega Drive, I will not at all be surprised, because that game is not good.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I mean, but that just highlights the differences between the systems with that era, even porting the same game or the same license. I mean, when you have something like, prime example, Aladdin from the Mega Drive Genesis as opposed to the SNES, it's night and day. Night and day. And it's just Sometimes,
and they're both good.
Yeah, both good. Sometimes this is just the way it panned out.
Yeah, I mean, and like obviously he's not allowed to have a sword in the Nintendo one, but
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I like, in retrospect, I look back at that and go, it was actually cool that there's differences.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that now. Look, I'm very convinced that it's basically save file as Xbox, save file as PS.
Yeah.
That's how it appears to me when I play. Even Hades, I played that on 3 platforms.
Yep.
Have I? No, 2. I haven't played PC. I played Nintendo and I played Xbox, and there's very little difference.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I've played Streets of Rage 4 on Steam, Switch, and on Xbox, and yeah, it runs a little faster on the Xbox, but it's the same, man. I mean, I sort of do miss to an extent the differences in creative license that having different developers on different consoles, sort of gave. And like there is a part of me that, consistency's good, but also it's kind of a shame that we can't have some differences and some people, sort of go, oh, I like this better or I like that better. It's kind of sad a little bit, I find.
In certain situations, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think for the most part, it provides a better product.
It does.
You do get consistency. And not only that, you've got the development kits are a lot more available to studios now. Like they don't have to go through the whole, you remember Sega and EA having their little shit fight over development and that sort of thing,
producing their own carts and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you don't have that side of things. So I think it does make for a better, more streamlined development cycle. But like you say, the differences, sometimes they're great, sometimes not so much. But every now and then you'll get 2 really good versions of the same thing.
Yeah, and look, I think with something like the Switch, for example, I'd like to see them develop games properly on the Switch. I don't want to see them scale down and make longer loading times and cloud host, shit like. I don't want them to try and make shitty versions of next gen games. Like, I want them to really make a Switch game. I mean, some games, like I said, Hades and Streets of Rage, they're fine. They work perfectly fine. Remasters of retro games work fine. It's got plenty of hardware for shit like that. But I don't want to see just downscaled, shittier looking versions. I want them to, especially if there's not going to be crossplay, which I very rarely is between the Switch and everything else. I'd rather see them just sort of reinvent it or make it as faithful as they can while keeping it running well and playing well.
I mean, you get a game like Elden Ring. I mean, that's a lot of information involved in that game. There's a lot of detail. How are you going to be able to scale that down to the Switch well without increasing loading times?
Yeah, well, even at all in many cases.
Yeah, and it comes down to the hardware. Like, do you mess with hardware or do you mess with the source code? Not the source code. The
product itself.
The product itself. So, like, which way is Nintendo going to go? And to be honest, I think they're going to fuck with the product instead of their own hardware.
Well, the thing is, there's so many Switches out there, and Nintendo's very hesitant to release a new console because they've just got records and dollar signs in their eyes, right? They can't see that the Switch is too slow and too weak. So, I mean, unless the cloud stuff gets a lot better, the game streaming off the cloud, I mean, to be honest, I think they're at the point now with those games where it could barely run PS4 ports, and so like I think they need to start doing what they were doing with the Game Boy and stuff.
To be honest, I think Nintendo's going to sit there trying to hold back the tide with a rake.
Yeah,
for the next 5 years until they realize, hang on, this ain't going to work, and eventually they'll try a new system, but it's not going to be for a while.
Like Sonic Frontiers came out on, that was on PS5 and it's on Switch. It shouldn't be on Switch.
No.
Because it can't, not in its form that it's in, it can't run properly. So, like, it's too much pop in. The stages are too big. I just feel like, all right, yeah, they put The Witcher on the Switch, but just go on YouTube and have a look at the difference.
Oh yeah, massive.
Or even I played the Outer Worlds on the Switch, and it took so fucking long to load. Mortal Kombat 11 on the Switch, I played it there first when it came out.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay, but once you get the next gen version of it, you realize, Jesus.
Yeah, massive difference.
Yeah, it's yeah.
And that's something I want to bring up. Sorry to interrupt, but something I want to bring up in today's episode is the generational difference and the hardware. A lot of times you can't go and get some new software and run it on old hardware simply for the fact that it is not optimized to do that.
No, you got to rewrite it.
Which you end up with a situation where it's the opposite way with, say, Final Fantasy VII Remake, where you've got an old program and they just go, all right, screw it. It's too hard to bring it forward, so we'll just reimagine it, remake it. And that can work. But going the other way with hardware is nearly impossible because it's old. And it gets to a point where it is, well, PC gamers that know this, you get 5 or 6 years down the line and you can really tell that it's old gear. So, Nintendo, they need to start developing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's being left in the dust, and they're being stubborn for the sake. And while they're selling a shit ton of Switches, why would they care?
Exactly.
But, I mean, the reason this is relevant to today's episode with Tekken, right, is because arcade ports to home consoles in this era were pretty loose interpretations a lot of the time, right? And they were always substandard. And I remember this game being one of the first where I didn't feel that way.
Exactly right.
So on Tekken 1, one of the forefathers of the fighting game community, very held in high esteem by both of us. This is where it all began. And, this is going to get compared to Virtua Fighter in many respects. At the time, people now will look at it and go, Tekken's a huge franchise. It's at EVO every time. It's massive.
Yep.
It never used to be. It used to be very much in a battle with Virtua Fighter. And it was a direct competitor with it, right? So this released in arcades in 1994 and then a year later on the PlayStation in 95. And then to put this into perspective of, you've got development crunch and all of that, games taken fucking 10 years to make and all of that. Tekken 2 came out literally a year later. It was out in arcades around the same time the home port of Tekken 1 came out.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean,
this is a theory that I have when it comes to these types of transitional type eras where before Tekken and Virtua Fighter, there weren't a huge amount of these sort of polygon 3D type animations. It was really hard to do with the technology at the time. Even if you could get the polygon counts higher than your competitor, it was hard to implement in a way where it didn't run like shit just because the hardware couldn't render to the standard that we're used to now. And I really think that Tekken 1 was always shoved out there into the arcades as development on Tekken 2 was taking place in the background, simply as a a proof of concept or a developmental type product. And I can't imagine they imagine the kind of success that Tekken 1 would have.
Well,
it dragged a lot of people into it. People loved it.
Well, 3D fighters were brand spanking new. These were arguably the first two, right?
Oh, yeah. And you get this situation where they've released something the next year. It was like, even if you looked at the success that that Tekken 1 had from the cabinets, there's no way you can crunch that amount of work into 12 months.
Well,
so yeah, it was absolutely a test, and yeah, they hit a home run with it.
Yeah, I think that it's clear that Tekken 2 and Virtua Fighter 2 are both updates to their respective, predecessors, right? And they both come out basically a year later. Now, if you look at the difference between Tekken 2 and Tekken 1, graphics-wise, this is a huge improvement. It's noticeable anyway. And the gameplay is, I think where Tekken shines is its gameplay, because initially Virtua Fighter does look better, especially Virtua Fighter 2. Virtua Fighter 2 looks so much better than Virtua Fighter 1. And in just a year, they really master their use. I don't think they use polygon. They were using triangles or whatever. I'm trying to think of the name, but it's not rolling up. It's not, you got polygons, and then you had.
Yeah.
They had a different approach for the two respective franchises. But
whereas Tekken took more of a polygonal style approach to it, Virtua Fighter had the sort of wireframe with textures, and those textures, it's essentially what people use when they're programming in like hard surfaces in like RPGs or open world games, for example. You go back 10 years, 15 years, they were using wireframe to establish the texture, and they would just place that in the open world where they wanted, and that was good. Where Virtua Fighter had trouble was applying that to a moving wireframe instead of just a static boundary per se.
Well, you can see that in the intro of Virtua Fighter. I mean, Tekken, to its credit, you look at Tekken 3, it certainly overtakes Virtua Fighter eventually with graphics until obviously the next consoles come out and that sort of thing. I mean, you look at Tekken Tag on the PS2, it looks phenomenal still for its time. But, I mean, I think 3D fighters looked pretty janky at the time. We just didn't think so because it was new, and we were going from a 16-bit to a 30-bit era. And the arcade was the only thing capable of running that kind of game until the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation come out, right? Yeah. And, and also there's obviously a 32X port of Virtua Fighter, which is probably the superior port, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But they certainly master the graphics eventually, but I just thought these were the first 3D fighters to really actually play well, in my opinion. You look at Street Fighter's attempt to replicate this, and Street Fighter X eventually gets good when they have the X plus alpha and they actually do get it somewhere decent.
Yeah.
But they got in, Virtua Fighter and Tekken really grabbed the bull by the horns with this genre, and even though there's no real sidestepping, and it's
kind of feels like you can,
it's 3D-ish. You can roll on the floor, and the stage moves around. You can do that funny view where you press the start button, or the and you can have that top-down view, which for some reason they put in just to show off the graphics, even though
I think it was just a developer has figured, fuck it, let's just try this. Let's see if we can do it. And then, it was kind of a novelty, and they just left it in. So look at what we can do.
No one's going to fight like that, right?
Nobody's going to fight like that. But nobody plays Tekken so they can play Galaga,
Well, I mean, this is the best port of Galaga, really, because it's got the Tekken add-on. But
yeah. I didn't buy Tekken just for, for the game itself. I bought it for Galaga. Tekken just came with it.
I think what comes along with this, right, is real music too.
Yeah.
Right? So chiptunes are kind of, we look back on chiptunes in hindsight and think, oh, that's real. They sound really cool. Like I love that music now.
Yeah.
But at the time, the only reason we had it is because the sound hardware was shit. So it was limited. It wasn't like I said, it's not it's shit, but it's not shit because of it's poorly done. It's just the limitations of the hardware and the cost and that sort of thing at the time. And moving towards CD-based systems. That's why there's nothing like this on the Nintendo 64, right? And you needed CDs.
Yeah,
especially
really
when with the endings, like the sort of animated 3D rendered endings of Tekken as well. Like, that's all revolutionary shit, right? At the time, individual characters get their own sort of Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
3D ending with the actual sprites
yeah,
for the
and
most part.
the brilliant thing they did with the sound design is you have a small amount of samples for the special effects side of things, like when their voice when they're attacking, or the impact sounds, movements, that sort of thing. They have a small amount of samples, and they've applied them in enough variation that you don't really realize at the time that Heihachi, Jack, who's the other guy? I forget, but they all use these same special effects.
Yeah,
Ganryu.
well, it's a
And
palette
then,
swap, but a sound palette swap.
exactly right. And they do it with enough variation that each character feels pretty individual, even though they're using communal assets.
Yeah, and the communal assets of the moves as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting into the gameplay here, but I mean, when's the first time you encountered this game? I mean, for me, like this and Tekken 2 really so close together,
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one I played first. I remember our rec center across the road having both a Tekken and a Tekken 2 cabinet at various times. That's where I remember playing Tekken 1 first. I remember, we on a trip to Bali, we played Tekken 2, but I'm pretty sure I'd played that also before we went on that trip.
Yeah.
So
First time I remember playing Tekken 2 and actually realizing it was Tekken 2 was while we were on a trip to the UK. There was like a laser tag place down the road from where we were staying, and they had a Tekken 2 cabinet in there. So that's the first time I ever really remember playing Tekken 2. And I can't remember the first time I played Tekken. It must have been at that little cabinet, just across the road at the rec center we used to go to. I would have to say it would be there. But later on, possibly a year or so later, after the console release, we had both Tekken 1 and 2.
yeah, I mean, I remember us fucking around at that rec center, just picking different characters and doing throws to see what they look like. And laughing our asses off at Law running up the chest and doing a backflip. And,
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. Every character had 2 different command grabs like that.
Yep.
They're relatively easy to do, just 2 button presses. They persist to this day. I don't even need to hotkey that shit.
No.
I mean, and that's I'm pretty sure. I mean, we had this on our PlayStation. We got a PlayStation pretty early on.
Yep.
And for me, this is one of the first games I remember going, yeah, this is the arcade version. Like I did with Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and Virtual Fighter 2. But Mortal Kombat 3 I had on Saturn. I remember going, wow, this is the arcade version.
Yeah.
This is as good as the arcade version. But what was more impressive about Tekken was it was a 3D fighter, right?
Yeah, and not only that, the release or the port to home console, you got all the unlockables. You had Heihachi as playable. There was a bunch of different assets that were changed between the arcade port and the home console.
And those bosses were there, and those palette swaps, and then move swaps and sound swaps, and the combination of the 2 to make 3 different things to make new characters seem fresh was really cool. So block more than just making a ninja a different color.
And I think all those little secrets, like you beat the game with Paul and you unlock Kuma, King gets Armor King. That sort of secret character gave it a lot of replayability. And you hadn't really seen that up until that point. Well, not in a massive way anyway. And I think that was some of the secret sauce for Tekken's success.
And it wasn't a cheat. You earned it. And
you earned it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're using Michelle and you unlock Ganryu.
Yeah.
And they're not like a palette swap. You're not unlocking the mirror image. It's a completely different character. But they also tied those unlockables in story-wise. Like there was some connection between the 2.
Yeah, like a rival character thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like if Street Fighter did that, I guess, say Ryu would unlock Akuma or Ken.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. And it, like, if you go just a little bit deeper than a surface level, you find that the story does tie them together. I mean, you couldn't really give a 10-minute video on how these two characters interact at the time because of the, you know, obviously the limitations of the hardware. But it was just enough to keep people putting money into it.
Yeah, look, I think Tekken brought with it some good mechanics, right? It brought the one button, one limb mechanic. It didn't go for a block button, which thankfully, you know, thankfully, so
The block
I am
button.
at peace with the block button, but I am not in favor of it. I don't mind it. I just prefer to press back to block. I think it's more natural. And
It is very rare you will get me to play a fighting game that has a block button.
yeah, and I think this is what sours you somewhat on Virtual Fighter at times. Like,
yeah, it does. And I understand the need for the mechanic, but it is so unintuitive to the control scheme. It makes perfect sense to have one, but it just doesn't make things flow and as well as they should. You know, I hate it. Absolutely hate it.
and I think it's no secret that games that block without a block button with back for block, the premier fighting games, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, as strong as Mortal Kombat is, strong as what Soul Calibur, Virtual Fighter, other block button games are, they're not the premier events at Evo or whatever. And I think it's a lot. It plays a role, right? I think Virtual Fighter went for a very simple control scheme, which is good, and actually, it shows what can be done with very little. But this was never going to port to the Mega Drive. So why they went with a 3-button punch, kick, guard layout, I don't know why they did that. Like, Tekken went 1 button, 1 limb, which made sense also for the PlayStation controller.
Yeah.
But, with the 6-button layout, could have done the same thing and just had these extra buttons for throws or something. Like, I mean, to me, I feel like having, your square as one limb, your triangle is the other, and then exactly like right, left punch, right, left kick. And I think it was so brilliant. And given that controllers were going for a button, it, in hindsight, was very smart. Like, I really don't like shoulder buttons in Street Fighter and stuff. I really prefer the 6-button layout.
Yeah.
And that's, so for me, Tekken to take that approach and to focus on normals as well and not so much on specials was quite innovative. And the gameplay was quite good. The recovery, getting up and recovering in Tekken is second to none, especially back then.
I think that mechanic in itself, with the different tactics you use, so you can do that the short spring up. Oh, was that a Tekken?
Not in Tekken 1, you can only do the long one.
The long one. Big sideways roll, I think. You could kick, low, high, punch, straight off the ground. It was a very unique thing at the time. Now it's a mainstay. I mean, with Tekken, as far as I know or remember, you could just lay there.
You don't have to get up, but you can also be hitting on the ground. So, the moon jump can get you on the ground too.
Oh, yeah.
Moon jump's funny.
It's
early
brilliant.
3D fighters had it.
Yeah. It should still be in games now. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorites from that era is the moon jump.
Yeah. Look, and I think the moon jump has been certainly dialed down in Virtual Fighter. The fact that you could do a low kick, high kick, recover, the punch buttons would roll you either way, and you could spring up, you could roll forward, roll back. It made getting up dangerous for the other player, right?
Yeah.
And you can see this by modern Tekkens having that parry from the low kick with the get up, right?
Yep.
Now, that made defending yourself much, much better. And I really liked early Tekken for this.
Yeah, it's not the same as, say, Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where you can jump in, say you get them down in a corner, you jump in, and you punish them. Now, if you did that with Tekken, you try and jump in, they're on the floor, you're not safe. They could do a spring up, and that's it. You know, they could hit you off the floor. So getting close to them was a very pros and cons tactical decision. And, you know, it just added an extra layer. Like, the combat system wasn't particularly difficult or complex, but it gave you a huge amount of flexibility when it came to fighting.
Look, and there's very few invincibility frames.
Yeah.
When you're on the floor, you can be kicked, right?
Yep.
When you're in the air, you can be kicked. I mean, juggling is very hard in the early Tekkens, but it's still possible. Like, it's got combos starting to become a thing. Combos are a rabbit hole we'll get down in another episode. We have some strong opinions on combos in modern fighting games.
Yeah.
But you could see the starting to make normals for combos a thing, but they weren't excessive. And you could also, you couldn't just block. Command grabs are very easy to execute and and they would do a lot of damage.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, the fact that you could lay there and then surprise your opponent how you get up. You could roll away and avoid ground attacks, but you couldn't not be hit on the ground. So you couldn't camp and lay there and just, and also you could do that jump downward punch while they're on the ground. So Tekken gave some defensive tools that were quite interesting, and the fact that if you grab at the same time as the other person, it techs, and they would expand this in Tekken 2 with Jun Kazama having like reversals and things like that.
Yeah.
So
something I just remembered also was running.
Yes, actually, you're right.
Yeah.
Unblockable shoulder charge.
I know Mortal Kombat had it at some point, but I don't know if...
No, but if you ran into them, you would just keep running until your run meter runs out. Like, run. But
I can't remember many other fighting games, having that mechanic at that time.
Yeah, well, the run, you could do a jump kick, you could do a slide.
Yeah.
Take out their legs. You could just do nothing and shoulder charge them, which, like I said, was unblockable. If you were close and you did it, you could do the ultimate tackle. Is the ultimate tackle a Tekken 2 thing only?
I'm pretty sure it's Tekken 2.
Only. And to the fact where they made it a move for Kazuya. But the thing is, the unblockable, you just couldn't camp on the end of the screen. They could run at you and you would have to try and figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You could jump over them, I suppose, but also you could be rear-facing and you wouldn't automatically just turn around either.
No.
Now, that lent for back throws.
Yeah.
So this game was a lot more innovative. I mean, so was Virtual Fighter 2. Virtual Fighter also not the number 2, but I mean, and the ring outs in Virtual Fighter were a thing as well.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Some cheap fucking victories, though.
Yeah, but funny victories, and
them falling over and shit out the ring.
Yeah, you had to manage your ring awareness. If you couldn't keep yourself pretty safe just with positioning, you were screwed. Yeah. So this era of development was a first for a lot of things because there was no template, and I think Tekken was probably the best.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there might be other things that came on first. Always there's Battle Arena Toshin. There was other 3D fighters out there.
Yeah.
But I'm not exactly sure on their timelines. I know Dead or Alive is later, but like I look at these things, and now you can argue that they didn't invent all of these mechanics. But to be honest, Apple didn't invent the MP3 player, but everyone remembers the iPod. So it's the first to implement it well, and they were among the first. And obviously, Tekken is probably my favorite fighting game franchise. It will be a day one purchase, the new one, the Tekken 8.
Oh yeah,
I'll pay full price for that one for sure. So
more than once, I have no doubt.
Yeah, I bought consoles for Tekken. I bought consoles for Virtual Fighter. To be fair, I got the Saturn for Virtual Fighter.
It's why I got the PlayStation 2 and 3. Is just for Tekken and, a side hustle of Final Fantasy.
Well, when we got the PlayStation 2, we got Tekken Tag with it.
Yeah.
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 And I don't think it was a very controversial choice between us. It wasn't like, oh, I want this, I want that. No, we agreed that we were getting tagged.
I don't even think we really, and we used to argue about everything, and this was not even really worth asking about. It's like, yeah, well, we can get Tekken with this, and that was it. We got one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. At launch.
yep.
Yep. We were one of those lucky kids.
Yeah, this franchise sold consoles.
Well, it was exclusive for so long as well. It, like, for me, every other fighting game was better on the Saturn. And the only reason this wasn't better on the Saturn was it wasn't on the Saturn, right? So,
yeah.
you know, and, you know, the 64, it had KI Gold. MK4 was pretty shit on the 64 as well. But yeah, I mean, 3D fighters, this and Virtual Fighter are the forefathers of this genre.
Yep.
The 2D fighting franchises, when they tried to go 3D, fuck it up. And now they've opted for 2.5D. I mean,
it runs better, but it looks so bad. It looks so bad.
I mean, would you consider Fatal Fury to be a 3D fighter? They're sidestepping.
Yeah, they are. I wouldn't consider it a 3D fighter, though.
It's tiered fighting. Yeah.
But it's almost like a different version of like an arena fighter.
Yeah.
You know, like Smash Brothers or something.
And the music in this game was brilliant. It was CD based, obviously. I used to bang, used to slap, and the characters used to. I love the characters from this game too. They all had a story. They all were kind of a stereotype. Like martial law was a Bruce Lee stereotype.
Yeah,
Kazuya's the Shoto. You know,
I like the fact that the music was so well suited to the stage they were on. Like you have King George Island, which is in the fucking Antarctic, you know, so they're fighting in Antarctica. Then you go to Angkor Wat, you've got the Acropolis, and Monument Valley had this really eerie sort of music to it. And it just, you know, you get the feeling that you're not meant to be there, but somehow two people are fighting in the middle of this place you're not meant to be in. And the stage music was brilliant.
The baseball stadium.
Yeah.
The baseball stadium was dope.
Man.
Yeah, it was. It certainly was at the time. I believe they nailed the stage design and they nailed the music. And the characters kind of had their stages, but it would be Tekken 2 where they really developed that and took it to the next level. Yeah. And I felt like it, you know, well, we've got how many playable characters are in this?
Oh, there's heaps, man. There's heaps. For the era it was in, there's massive amounts when you include the
18, I suppose. 18 if you include Devil, palette swap, only on the console.
I don't think you got many different. Did you get any different attacks or anything? Or
nah, it's just a straight up palette swap.
So basically just a costume.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you had a lot.
And they did it in a very clever way, right?
Oh, yeah. Because you just go sideways. Like on the character select screen, you just keep going right. You know, hit the end. Yep, keep going. And then next thing you know, you've got P-Jack, you've got Wang, Kunimitsu, I think Li Chaolan, Kuma, Ganryu. It's, Armor King. It's mental.
It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. And, you know, and it's a large, such a large, diverse roster. I mean, even the gameplay in this there were some busted characters. King was busted with his elbow move. It had more the elbow stick. One of them had the recovery frames are longer than if you got. You're better off getting hit than blocking because the recovery frames are shorter. They patched that out because that was still in Tekken 2. That's why they have the version A and B in Tekken 2. Yeah, I mean, you got. Yeah, I think Kazuya was kind of busted.
Yeah, King's been busted right from the start. I mean, he is still a brilliant character. Still top tier.
Yeah. Not many people in Tekken 7 maining King I can see at the moment. I mean, my main was Kazuya. Who was yours? Yoshimitsu?
Oh yeah, I'm a big Yoshimitsu fan because he looked cool. But it I was pretty young with Tekken 1. So, I either picked Yoshimitsu, Kazuya, because he looked cool. He had that evil red eye looking thing, or it would have been Law, just because he did the backflip throw, and I thought that was cool. I didn't really have a main character. It was always one of those three because I think that, I just thought they were funny or they looked the best or yeah.
Yeah. Look, I played way more Tekken 2 than 1. So, I mean, when I played Tekken 1, I would use Kazuya because he was my main in 2.
Yep.
And Jun Kazama wasn't in 1, obviously, so she was another one of my mains. So,
Yeah.
Kunimitsu was good. Well,
Yep.
I mean, cool idea.
Yep.
It's fucking bear.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, joke characters are definitely a thing in Tekken.
Oh.
As
Yeah.
realistic as this was, with the fighting styles being actually very similar to how they are in real life, there was, albeit no, yeah,
I like that mix between, like, say, you get a check hook right straight. That's going to do some damage, and that's realistic, absolutely. But then you've got a fucking moon jump. I like that mix between the, clearly ridiculous stuff
like Jack and
like
Kuma.
Jack, this giant robot, or, fighting a literal grizzly bear. But then you've got Wang, a tiny little old dude who's, just really talented. It's like, yeah, he goes up against a grizzly bear, he's going to get eaten. But then you've got that ridiculous side to Tekken where it's, well, maybe not. Maybe he's just really good at martial arts. So it straddles that line between reality and fiction. And yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, there's no
Awesome.
fireballs. I mean, even in Tekken 2 with the laser beam from Devil, that's
Yeah.
a supernatural creature doing that laser beam.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
a regular fighter,
Yeah.
And I think that's actually, a lot of people would say, oh, it's the realism. It isn't, but it is. It's closer than ever before, And I think they obviously lean into it a little bit with some characters.
The
but
whole
really,
the Mishimas killing each other every 5 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't talked about the story. I mean, fighting game fans will know the story, but basically it's Heihachi thinks Kazi is weak or whatever, throws him. It gets retconned. We all know that. It gets thrown down into a valley off a cliff. If he's strong, he'll climb back up. Kazi is kind of not strong, so he makes a deal with the devil, quote unquote. This gets retconned to be a gene.
Yep.
And then he gets thrown in there because he has it or whatever. And he gets out of the cliff, gets his revenge.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, that's Heihachi's the final boss.
Throws Heihachi into a volcano just to be extra sure. Yeah.
Well, does he throw? No, he throws Heihachi off a cliff because in Tekken 2, the opening sequence is him climbing back up the cliff. Heihachi is the one who makes certain.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
Mishima's always. Yeah.
Mishima's always throwing each other off high things. It's just what they do. And let's be honest, the story's not really important with fighting games. It never has been. It's not the draw for the game. I mean, nobody's going to solve world level problems with a fighting tournament. I mean, it just that's not reality, but that's where the fantasy side of it comes in, and it's just entertaining enough to give the characters some backstory. That's all it is.
It's the interplay between different characters too that makes Tekken really cool, right? Even just the fact that Heihachi has trained Kuma to fight Paul.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Paul, believe it or not, is a front runner to win these tournaments early on.
Yeah. He beat Kazuya in one of them, and then he fought to a draw or something, and then he won the third tournament, but then he fucking left. And he pisses off, and he doesn't realize the tournament hasn't finished.
And Jin come in at the last moment and take all the credit. Kazama. Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's that kind of ridiculousness to the story, like Law and Paul being like best buds.
Yeah, I love that. You're trying to
Yeah.
teach Paul the backflip and then making it an actual move,
Yeah.
and he can't quite land it.
Fucking lands on his head.
Yeah, that stuff is that little details in Tekken are very good. And as far as fighting games with stories go, this is one of the better ones. You know, like I appreciate the lore in Tekken, and you know, it's obviously very Mishima based. The protagonist isn't really a protagonist half the time either, which is another different take.
Oh
Like-
no, they're very grey sort of.
Yeah,
It's a bit
Kazi
like
is not a good dude.
it's a bit like calling the Punisher a good dude. It's like no, he is right down the middle of anti-hero. He is right in the middle. Whereas Kazuya, he is leaning somewhere between anti-hero and outright villain. So he's bang in the middle of that. You know, that's about as good as it gets. Other than, you know, some of the other characters are, but they're side characters.
Well, I mean, Kazi
you
has
know.
straight up lost the internal struggle with the devil, right?
Yeah.
Or he's so evil, he's actually, the devil has lost the internal struggle with him. We don't know. But he has succumbed to evil either way. You know?
Even someone like King, you know,
Yeah.
like he wants to raise money for an orphanage. Yeah, that's great. But then he also wants to kill Armor King. You know?
Isn't it his mentor? I mean, there's King 1 as well. So one of the kings does die, right? And I think you've got Michelle Chang trying to save her land. You know, she's a Native American. She's trying to save her land. What have we got? Nina Williams is a spy who's on the run.
Yeah. I think the most good, I guess, not really fucking, you know, trying to sell. Well, maybe Yoshimitsu.
Yeah, the Manji clan's intentions are kind of not really well stated, are they?
I mean, even Jack, like, he doesn't really have any motivation. He doesn't have any sort of goals. He's just sort of doing what his programming
he's
says he should do.
He's a T800, mate.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, he shows instances of sort of compassion with the girl, right?
Yeah. But the thing is the girl a threat to him? Is the girl going to stop him from achieving his objectives? If she did, I guarantee he'd probably squash her. You know, there's no really clear-cut good character in this series.
No,
maybe maybe Jun.
Jun Kazama is the most honorable, kind, and upstanding citizen of the Tekken community, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone else who, But obviously, that's, again, Tekken 2, Tekken 3, they start to introduce other dynamics as well. Jin has obviously goes on to have a bit of a evil take over the world streak.
Yeah, he's a bit of a dick.
He's got his motives are good, but that doesn't justify his means. You know, so I think the Tekken franchise, what a franchise it is. You know, because for me, you've got Street Fighter and you got this.
Yep.
Not necessarily in that order, by the way. So,
oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I mean, if you were, you know, like, I don't.
Who's your main now?
Now, I'm back on Jin.
Back on Jin.
Back on Jin. Akuma, but he's going to be gone into 8, probably, I would say. Who else have I been using? I've been using that Lydia. I've been using.
Yep.
Julia is one I've been using off and on. Yeah. So, Kunomitsu, I've put a lot of hours into on Tekken 7. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I've got many characters I can use now, but back this game came out, I would use Kazuya or Li Chaolan.
Yeah.
Usually. Or Yoshimitsu. It's, you know, this. Yeah. But this game is really special to me. I mean, this as it being my favorite franchise in fighting games, and I don't think this holds up today when on a replay, to be honest, and especially compared to Tekken 2 and 3.
Oh, it hurts, man.
Yeah,
Fucking
I mean,
hurts.
Even the boss. We'll talk about the boss though. Heihachi.
Yeah,
pretty decent boss. Not overly difficult, but not easy.
Not cheap.
Yeah.
Not a fucking rubber banding piece of shit.
Not do a couple of jump kicks and then just punch until the time runs out. Not, jump kick like Mortal Kombat 2. You don't...
Doesn't do 70% of your health bar. He's not a cheap bastard like, say, Shao Kahn or that dude from Guilty Gear. It's nothing like that. Like, he's a little bit quicker. He's got, a little bit more damage resistance, but that's it. Like, it's, you play it on ultra hard or whatever.
He's a normal character. I don't believe he does have any extra damage or anything.
No. He's just, he's there. He's a little bit harder, but it's not impossible.
This game wants you to play through multiple times with multiple characters. And if you made the boss fucking an absolute cunt to beat, you wouldn't do it, right? And that's what I felt like. A lot of the 2D fighters from back in the day were just, and that was just bad.
Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 is, I don't care what anyone says. It's not better than 3.
No way.
2 would have been better than 3 with a better AI.
Yep, absolutely.
But, I mean, 3, I like Mortal Kombat 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, the finished one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you were going to score this game, give it a tier, what tier would you give it? Because, I mean, it's old. It doesn't hold up. Tekken 2 is better. Tekken 2 is better still.
Yeah. I try to base my scores on the era they were made, the impact they've had on gaming as a whole, but fighting games in general, and also how much I fucking enjoyed them. Tekken has a lot of features and innovations that I absolutely love. The music was great. The graphics were brilliant for the time. It was very innovative, but it doesn't hold up. Like, if you put this against say you've got some half-assed studio out there, they've got like 6 people working for them, they could probably pump out something that looks better than this, and that's just the way it is. Technology rolls on, but I'm going to put this probably in A tier.
Yeah, I mean, I
simply for the impact it's had.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to give this an A- because for the time it was great, but it doesn't hold up the way something like Street Fighter 2 holds up.
Oh, it's got its flaws, that's for sure. You can't go back and replay this. It hurts. It hurts to see it.
Oh, and Sony don't want you to. You have to do the PS Premium and all that. Anyway.
Absolutely.
But Tekken 2, I mean, I got Tekken 5 somewhere where I could play the all 3 on that. But
yeah.
But yeah, there's no reason to play this if you got 2, and there's no reason to play 2 if you got 3. Yeah. And it doesn't hold up the way some of the older 2D fighters do. So, I mean, to me...
Even something like the early Call of Duty games, right, where they hold up because you have that replayability. Yeah, they don't look great, but they still play really well.
Yeah.
Tekken, like it's like going
it's got
back.
The GoldenEye problem, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, so A tier for me.
Yep. Again, A-. Got to be respectful to your elders.
Yep.
What a legacy this game has now.
You need to respect the old boy.
Yep.
This is the grandfather of all fighting games, essentially. It's one of the old boys in the retirement home. Street Fighter, Tekken, a couple other franchises. They're all sitting there in the retirement home talking about the good times, and they need to be respected.
Yep. I think that's a nice place to leave it.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, don't smash your fucking controllers. They're expensive. And we'll see you on the next one.
Have a good time, guys.
Game over.